The West isn't asking, can Canada be fixed anymore? The only question now is, all right, how fast do we leave, and what form does that exit take? That is what has stunned the rest of Canada.
Parts of BC are expressing interest, along with Manitoba. So this is what's known as Wexit, literally a Western exit from the Confederation.
Provincial separation from Canada, from the Confederation, is the talk of the town.
Albertans are hurt and betrayed. That's how I think Albertans are feeling.
Could it actually happen? Alberta calling it quits with Canada after a 120-year-long marriage?
The West just shocked Canada with an official Wexit roadmap, and Ottawa is freaking out. For decades, the West was brushed off as complaining farmers and oil workers. Well, now those same farmers are drawing blueprints for a brand new nation, and Canada might never recover.
Could it actually happen? Alberta calling it quits with Canada after a 120-year-long marriage?
Alberta is not just talking anymore. It is building an entire blueprint for independence. What was once dismissed as wishful thinking has now become detailed planning, and the province is laying out what a new nation would look like. Banking systems are being designed, currency options are on the table, military frameworks are being discussed, and even food security is being mapped out. This is no longer theory, this is a roadmap, and Alberta is walking down it step by step.
How would the assets that we back our finance thing work?
Oh, aren't you just smart? Those are the kind of questions those Albertas need to ask. A group of people. You know what else we should do? Have our own oil refineries. We should start the product and we should finish the product.
One of the biggest shifts comes in finance. For too long, Alberta has been tied to Ottawa's fractional reserve banking system. But now, the push is for asset-backed banking through local credit unions and treasury branches. That means money tied to real value, controlled at home instead of policies dictated from the capital. It is about financial independence as much as political independence, cutting the cord from the Bank of Canada and standing on solid ground that belongs to Alberta. Energy is another cornerstone. Alberta is done with the old role of being a raw resource colony, where crude oil is shipped out and the profits are collected somewhere else. The new plan is to refine oil locally, create the jobs locally, and keep the wealth within provincial borders. It is about capturing the full value of Alberta's resources and building an economy that benefits its own people first.
That we be using?
Oh, you want assets, man? Listen to this.
Lay it on me.
Lithium, diamonds, all kinds of gases, oil. Do you know what grows in the north? Moose and buffalo food, bison food, elk.
And when you look at what Alberta has in its hands, the case for independence only gets stronger. Oil and gas are only the start. The province also holds lithium, essential for modern technology, diamond reserves, vast farmland capable of feeding millions, and some of the cleanest freshwater supplies anywhere in the world. Combine all of that with a skilled workforce, and Alberta is not just capable of independence, it is overqualified for it. It looks less like a province and more like a nation in waiting.
Number one, Bill C-69, better known as the No More Pipelines Act. That slammed the door on investment projects and it buried the rest in a swamp of red tape.
But Alberta's push is not just about ambition, it is about frustration. The anger comes from years of what people call sabotage from Ottawa, and it has come in 3 devastating blows. The first was Bill C-69, which many call the No More Pipelines Act, because it piled on so much regulation and red tape that major investors walked away and projects stalled.
It was a deliberate landlock of Alberta's trillion-dollar oil sands, blocking access to Asian markets and stranding a resource base that could have enriched millions for generations.
The second was the oil tanker ban off the northwest coast of British Columbia, which effectively landlocked Alberta's trillion-dollar oil sands, cutting off access to Asian markets that were desperate for energy.
More hostile, along comes number 3. They piled on an emissions cap that singled out oil and gas. Not cement, not steel, not aluminum, just oil and gas.
The third blow was the emissions cap, which targeted oil and gas alone and carried projections of $1 trillion hit to GDP, the loss of 150,000 jobs, and the stripping away of $200 billion in provincial revenue by 2050. The results are visible. Northern Gateway cancelled, Energy East cancelled, Trans Mountain barely saved, and only after Ottawa nationalized it, and even then it ran 3 times over budget. To Alberta, this is not policy, it is punishment, and that is why independence has shifted from talk to action.
And yet, Ottawa also treats Saskatchewan like it's some sort of colonial outpost, bleeding them dry while lecturing them about emissions.
And now, Saskatchewan is standing at a crossroads. The province pumps out over 460,000 barrels of oil a day. It is one of the world's leading producers of uranium, potash, and wheat. And yet, Ottawa treats it like a colonial outpost, while the world begs for the very resources Saskatchewan holds in its ground. This constant suffocation is pushing people to ask questions that once sounded unthinkable.
Premier Scott Moe isn't pretending anymore either. He's not going to block referendum efforts, and the grassroots groups are already mobilizing.
Premier Scott Moe has not blocked the referendum chatter. In fact, the silence from his office speaks volumes. Grassroots mobilization is spreading fast. Town halls are filling up, and the talk is no longer about minor reforms. It is about sovereignty. The options on the table are blunt. Saskatchewan could join Alberta in a sovereignty pact. Or, if Ottawa keeps the noose tight, some are openly saying the United States may be the fallback. The reason is simple. People here know their livelihoods are tied more closely to the American market than to any handouts from Ottawa. The choice for them is survival, not symbolism.
When Manitoba walked away from the trade and pipeline pact that Alberta and Saskatchewan signed, I'm going to be honest, that move by Manitoba felt like...
Manitoba, on the other hand, is facing a storm of anger. Premier Wab Kinew turned down an offer to join Alberta and Saskatchewan in a pipeline and trade pact. And that move is being branded as betrayal. His reasoning was that Indigenous veto rights stood in the way. But critics say this was nothing more than siding with Ottawa's blockade politics. The decision cut deep in rural Manitoba, where frustration is boiling over. Farmers, truckers, and small business owners say they are being abandoned, and their patience is wearing thin. Now the province faces a fork in the road. Stay chained to Ottawa and accept the decline, or align with the sovereignty bloc and carve out a new future for the West. Right now, Kinew's government has chosen loyalty to Ottawa, but the grassroots energy is pulling in a different direction. If enough pressure builds, Manitoba could still flip, but the clock is ticking.
Now let's go a little further westward, to British Columbia, because if there's ever been a...
Then there is British Columbia, a province that looks more divided than united. On the coast in Vancouver and Victoria, the political class is glued to Ottawa. Pro-climate policies are enforced with zeal. Tanker bans are defended as gospel, and every decision is made with federal approval in mind. But move inland, and you find a completely different story. In the interior, resource workers are furious. Loggers, miners, farmers, and oil crews see their livelihoods crushed under endless red tape and land restrictions. The breaking point came when the NDP government signed away control of 1.2 million acres to a small Indigenous group, in what many called outright economic surrender.
The divide is stark. The interior knows that its destiny is tied to the West, not to Ottawa's puppets on the coast.
For the interior, that was the final signal that their future does not lie with the Lower Mainland. It lies with Alberta and Saskatchewan, where resource development is seen as survival, not as a crime. This divide is only growing sharper every month. The interior no longer sees Ottawa or even Vancouver as partners. They see them as obstacles to their very existence. The momentum is shifting, and each of these provinces is being forced to choose sides. And the choices they make could reshape Canada forever.
There's no halfway deal this time. Quebec tried the Sovereignty Association trick back in the 1990s, promising independence while still clinging to Canadian passports. And
the West has made one thing very clear. There will be no half measures this time. Quebec tried the Sovereignty Association trick decades ago, promising independence while still keeping Canadian passports and Canadian dollars. And what happened? Ottawa used that bait and switch to crush the movement and slam the door on the dream. The West saw that, and they will not repeat it. For Alberta and Saskatchewan, and the others watching from the sidelines, there is no such thing as half independence. There is no scenario where you get to wave your own flag but still cling to Ottawa's money and rules. That road has already been tested, and it failed. This time the choice is absolute. You keep the Canadian dollar, and you stay chained to Ottawa. You keep the Canada Pension Plan, and you stay under their control. You keep the passports, and you are still Canadian. There is no middle road.
We're going to make Alberta great again, and that is when we cut ourselves off from the leech that is Eastern Canada.
That is why the West is saying full separation or nothing. This is not a bargaining tactic. This is not a negotiating chip to squeeze out better deals on pipelines or carbon taxes. This is the line in the sand drawn in thick black ink. And the reason it feels so different from past attempts is because it is not coming from political theater anymore. It is coming from the ground up, from the town halls, from the sovereignty panels, from the leaders drafting the plans step by step.
That's why Wexit isn't a slogan anymore, it's a declaration.
Wexit is no longer a slogan. Wexit is a declaration. It is not a tantrum. It is not a bluff. The West has spent years being told to wait it out, being told the anger will fade, being told a few reforms would fix everything. That strategy is dead. The anger has hardened into resolve, and once that switch flips, there is no way back.
Saskatchewan, Manitoba, BC's interior, and even the Yukon, they're all saying it in their own way. There's no going back.
And as this movement hardens, one territory is quietly watching from the edge. The Yukon has always been small in population, but massive in strategic value. Resource-rich, connected deeply to the West in culture and economy, and now quietly leaning in the same direction. Because the Yukoners see the writing on the wall. They see that if Alberta and Saskatchewan, and even parts of BC and Manitoba make the break, the game is over.
This country's great, but we do have to get some power back. And that's what the blackmail of separation comes in.
There is no going back. The West means it. The Yukon knows it. And Ottawa is running out of time. Comment below. Do you think Ottawa can still stop this breakup? Or is the West already gone?